to me, mental health should be totally evacuated from the vocabulary of providers, and really should be, your health is your wealth. Your health is your vitality. When I started all this over 30 years ago, it was like all woo-woo stuff, right? Like it was all woo-woo. Nobody really understood what was happening, although we knew it worked, right? But now we have so much science to back it up. And so now we really understand so much more that your mental health it's not mental health. It's your freaking health. It's affecting, at least 1,400 chemical responses. It's shifting your whole biology.
Welcome to Harmonize Your Life, conversations that inspire, awaken, and harmonize. I'm your host, Kingsley Willis, and each week we talk with experts in functional medicine, therapy, technology, quantum biology, and personal growth. Today we have Laurie Teal joining us to discuss some practical strategies for achieving emotional balance. I'm also joined by Michael MacDonald, co-founder of iah.fit, and Amanda Carpenter, iah's CEO, as co-hosts. Laurie, thank you for joining us, and tell us what brought you to iah. Let's just start right off the bat.
So what brought me to iah is, number one, the values of the platform, the transparency of the platform, the mission of the platform to help awaken consciousness and for the planet, and to spread and raise the vibe to love instead of fear.
I love that. So tell us about your journey were you always in this space, or just give us the breakdown of how you got to where you are today?
Well, if are you talking more like about the holistic perspective and the energetic perspective? Is that what you're referring to, Kingsley?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Was there like an aha moment that moved you into this, or was it sort of like always there?
Well, I feel like I've always been most connected to nature and animals growing up. Life was really chaotic at home and in my home environment, and nature and animals was the place that I found solitude. So there's some essence of that that's been woven into who I am, I think, from the very beginning. And I was always somebody that can recognize and see patterns in the environment and in other people, though, when you're growing up, sharing that voice with your parents wasn't always the best place to share that. And so, but I think really what woke me up more and more to that was, number one, the birth of my daughter at age 19. That's not like the greatest time, really, in retrospect, looking at the most healthy time necessarily to have a child. But in that moment, I was actually able to recognize the innate power that lived within me. And so that was like a really big shift in my own well-being at that moment. Like, life wasn't just something that happened to you. There was something more in its essence of being able to birth a child, and that awness and that awareness of what my body could do that was absolutely life-changing for me. And then shortly after that, I got super, super sick with an unknown illness. And, at this time I'm now 53, and that happened when I was 22 years old. And in those days, they didn't know what chronic fatigue virus was, but they gave me a chronic fatigue syndrome, that syndrome thing that says you're really sick, but we don't know what the heck is the matter with you. And I'm talking about a level of fatigue where I couldn't walk from here into the other room without absolutely having to lay down to go to sleep. And I had a young child. So it was on that health journey really into wellness that really allowed me the opportunity to kind of take control over my life and what was working for me, what wasn't working for me. And the deeper I got into that knowing, the more the spiritual aspect of my life showed up as well. And I think that's where vibration kind of comes in, because every layer of a pattern that I would heal, whether that was an eating pattern or a viral pattern or a relationship pattern, every level of healing made me more aware of the spiritual aspect of what was possible. So there's a little bit there. I could talk about this for days, but there's a little bit right there.
Well, I love that you've shared that, and I appreciate that, because that's definitely relatable as a parent. Obviously being a father is different than being a mother, but that having a child young, my wife had her mother had her pretty young. And I think the relationship they have to this day, I don't know if you're familiar with Gilmore Girls,
Yes.
but it's kind of like that.
Yes.
So that is it, are we best friends? Are we, mother daughter? And they talk every day, even though she lives in Europe, her mother. So yeah, talk a little bit more about that. Like, what was that like? And you mentioned there was this shift that was going on there, and then we'll get into some of the. We have other guests here too, people so I'm gonna get them to talk about how they met you.
Yeah. So as far as that time period, I felt like when you're really sick, right, when you're chronically ill, and I would say at that moment I would consider myself chronically ill, because it took really. There was a trajectory, and I think I'm still on that trajectory, but there was a time period where that illness really ruled my life. Okay. Every decision from when I was going to brush my teeth to, how I was going to take care of my daughter. I wasn't able to work. So my life got very, very small. Right. And I think there's some really beautiful opportunities in that when life gets so small, where you kind of have to make a decision about, do you want to live or you don't want to live? And it's in those minute, in those really minute moments of awareness of making those choices, because you couldn't worry about the big picture. Like, where am I going to move into this great house? What's my great job going to be? What's my profession going to be? How am I going to make impact? Like, none of those things have any sort of meaning at all when you can't function on the day-to-day thing. And so, to this day, I think like health is our biggest wealth. It's our biggest, it's the most impactful thing that we could be sharing with one another is our health. And I think there's been moments along my journey where, even through my divorce, my first divorce of 17 years of marriage, there was another opportunity for like the whole world around me to shut down. And my world became very, very small again. All the roles that I thought that I had left. My daughter was going away to college. My son was getting ready to graduate from high school. I had left my community. I had left a private practice. I'd left, a job where I had worked for 26 years. I'd left a marriage. And really in that marriage was what I referred to as the first family that I ever really had, where I really felt like I belonged somewhere. And that was all gone. And so, I was so grateful in those moments to have had this journey already through my health crisis, because I actually had tools to help me navigate a deeper level of awareness of even the relationship patterns that I was stuck in. And I remember one night, feeling so devastated, wondering like, okay, so who am I? And, but I don't really know what to do with myself. And I felt so depressed and so dark. And there was an owl that started hooting outside the window of where I was staying. And, the owl says, this was a barred owl. And it went like this, hoo, 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 hoo. And I like heard that sound. And I went to this knowing that was deep within me from previous awarenesses of my health journey. Well, I'm a child of light, like I'm light. But I'm like, now what? And I heard the owl go again. And the owl said, what I heard the owl say this time was, you need to start at the nucleus. And I was like, what the hell is the nucleus? I don't know what the nucleus is. Start at the nucleus. And it was like, oh, start from like that that place of what are my needs? Like, what are my core needs? What are my core values? And in that moment, I said, I need a place to live where I can, like, my son can feel safe. I need a job. I need money. And so the next day I got up and I called a real estate agent. I called my credit card company, and I called the place that I had resigned working from for all those years. And I had a better paying job, unfortunately with more responsibility, but a better paying job. I went and I found this house that I'm now living in, which is just an amazing thing that I had always dreamed about, having a house in the country in a rural area surrounded by wildlife. And I got a cash advance on my credit card so I could start paying for everything. And there you go. So within 12 hours, my life totally shifted because I was able to listen to, this vibration of, awareness around me, and connect to that.
Gosh, I love that story of the owl. That sounds a lot like Amanda. She's always telling me about, listen to the animals that cross your path that may not normally cross your path. So that's my awkward segue. Tell us, how did you and Amanda meet?
Oh my goodness. Amanda and I met several years ago at this point when I was just starting my nurse practitioner journey. And there was a client that was a mutual client between the two of us. And, she's a brilliant, when it comes to functional genomics and nutrition. And, when I growed up, I wanted to be just like her, kind of thing. I wanted to see, like, who is this woman? Maybe could I potentially work with her? How could I learn from her? And that's sort of where it started. And in the beginning, I feel like I was still caught up in this idea of I'm not quite enough. And Amanda is, this way that she knows things is so phenomenal and so amazing. And there was like a little bit of, I don't know, like tension is how I describe it, because I was comparing myself to her rather than just being with her. Right. So we talk about the layers of relationship and the layers of being. And when you can get the ego stuff out of the way and just be with each other, like that's when the magic really happens. And so I feel like that relationship, kind of was there in the distance. And then I don't even know how it happened, Amanda, whether it was through a spiritual thing that we were doing together, we found ourselves in, that the sisterhood aspect of things really came forward, and the friendship began to deepen. And, to be honest with you, Kingsley, I feel like she's my soul sister. And, my life is so much more rich with the quality of relationship that Amanda and I have. And also like the vision of what we want to build as community together, and a world that we want to be able to co-create together.
Wonderful. Okay, so I'll turn to Amanda. Tell us your side. How did you two meet?
So I'm thinking it was 2013-ish. So it's been well over 10 years at least at this point in time. And as Laurie shared, when we first met, it was as a client that we had in common who basically was kind of like, you two should meet. Like, and knowing this client who's incredibly intuitive. And so we met up for coffee. And it was actually my husband, Jason, and I, and Todd, her husband, and Laurie. And I still remember the coffee shop that we met in. And it was basically, we were talking about the practices that we had. And so Jason, my husband, was my office manager. Her husband was looking to step into the role of her office manager. She was starting her journey. And that's what our initial conversation was about. And I didn't know it at the time. Looking back, I had the energy of 1 foot in the PT practice and 1 foot out, because at that point in time, I identified as a physical therapist. But my soul knew that there was something, bigger, but I was in the midst of a health journey. And so as I followed my own health decline and journey and started to, get these different accolades and certifications and whatever, and learning about functional genomics as Laurie shared, and health coaching and consulting, like we kind of grew apart for a time. And now looking back, I can see why, because at that point in time, I was just entrenched in the science of everything. And, working in the chronic health world, helping some really amazing doctors solve some of the most difficult cases, but looking at the supplements and the lifestyle factors and the diet that people had. But I really wasn't focused on what I see as the foundational piece now, which is the vibration and the electromagnetic field around the heart. So after playing in that world for a few years, I took a step back and I was like, what is the common denominator of those patients who actually step out of chronic illness and really thrive in life? And I was like, they do their trauma work, and trauma, we'll go into trauma at another time, but we all have trauma, right? They do their trauma work and they really start to get in alignment with their authentic selves. And so that was a pivot that I made in saying, like, I'm going to do that with clients first instead of last. And I'm also not going to work with clients who are stuck in that victimhood where, illness serves some of us. Sometimes, illness served me in that it slowed me down. It stopped me in my tracks because I was overcommitting and too busy and had too much going on, and it served me. But the difference was I chose not to stay in that victimhood. I chose to use it as an opportunity to move beyond it. And so that's the discernment with clients that I worked with is, are they looking to stay in victimhood or are they looking to thrive? And just naturally, as I was living in this new world of heart rate variability in the heart field and the spiritual world, that's when Laurie dropped back in. And again, looking back, it was perfect timing because it was like our vibrations both were very, very different. And those that spend any time with us will call her joy and me love. They're like, oh, here comes love and joy, because we are just our authentic selves, right? Like we are our absolute authentic, real selves. And that's whether we're working with a client who has like really significant trauma, we do immersive experiences together, or if we're like having fun with our husbands together, it's the same version you're going to get of us. And so that relationship of authenticity really just deepened, and it's been a few years now. And so when I was introduced to iah, part of my discernment and my filter for whether or not I was going to work with iah was, can I bring these relationships with me? Like I have the most amazing conscious relationships and conscious community around myself. And can I bring them with me? Like, do I see a place for them with what I'm going to be doing in the world with iah? And because the answer was yes, that is one of the reasons that I said yes to stepping into iah. And that's where Laurie is now on our medical board.
Wonderful. I love that connection. So let's connect with Michael, who's also on the call here. Laurie, how did you and Michael first meet and talk, and what was that like?
So I met Michael through Amanda, and actually the first real face-to-face conversation I had with him, Amanda and I were at an entrepreneur conference in Austin, and he and his wife made the time in their schedules to kind of drive across town, which my understanding of driving across town in Austin is not necessarily the most easiest thing to do. But they wanted to just be able to reach out and like physically connect with Amanda and I while we were there. And so that was super thoughtful. And when I met him and Francesca, like the presence of the two of them and the level of compassion that both of them had was just an immediate attraction for me. And then I got Amanda invited me more into the iah, the foundation of iah and the values of iah and what the vision of iah was. And then, and so my dance with Michael, I feel like is just beginning, and I'm super excited about it.
Wonderful. Yeah,
me
Michael,
too.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Can I jump in on that? Yeah. When I first met Laurie at that hotel in downtown Austin, like she just bubbles with joy. Right. And there's music playing in the lobby, and she just couldn't contain herself. She's bopping around like she's just a dancer in her heart and soul. Right. Like you put a beat and I can just imagine her. She's the first one out there. Just come on, everybody. Like kind of, I see her as the life of the party.
Oh boy.
But, and we haven't had a lot of like one-on-one time, which I'm looking forward to, Laurie. because you are a very unique person in my world, right? I mean, you're a seasoned nurse practitioner in psychiatry. Like, I don't know anybody in that realm. You're a Reiki master. You're steeped in hypnosis. You're like all of these ancient. You're a shaman. Your resume is long, right? Like what you do and what your skills are, and you're just a bundle of joy on top of it. So, I guess for me personally, I'd like to kind of start it like, what drives your passion for holistic wellness?
So, what drives my passion is, as grand as it sounds, is really to alleviate as much suffering as possible. Though I think that for some reason in the human condition, I feel like suffering kind of helps hone us a little bit till we recognize that we don't really have to suffer. But somehow it's in the hurt and the pain that we actually find the pearls, the wisdom, the joy, the truth of really who it is that we are. Because otherwise, we're counting on our external world and what shows up and what it's kind of like living in the matrix, right? Like we think all that is real and that identifies us, and while it's certainly real, there's way more to it than that. We hear about things like The Secret, and that that earth is a living organism, and that everything is vibration and light, and like we know that through physics. But I think what really drives me is like helping other people wake up to that reality, that potentiality of that spark of beauty and oneness and life and creativity that lives in all of us. Like, it doesn't matter what socioeconomic system that you live in. It doesn't matter what part of the planet that you live on. Like, it's an innate gift that's available to each and every one of us. And that's really, I think, what drives me, Michael, is like wanting to, every single human being to be able to understand and recognize that about themselves. When I first had, like, we all have heightened experiences, whether it's the birth of a child, we can call that a heightened experience, right? This bigger of awareness of something else. When we watch a sunset, that can happen. When we are witnessing somebody, in their death journey, we can see that happen. But I feel like those opportunities, they're available, every second of the day if we pay attention to that and if we're open to that. It doesn't have to be in these one big blurps, like there's a huge shift with wanting to move to psychedelics and in the psych community. And that's beautiful, like beautiful opportunities to step into more profound experiences to understand who we are. But it's beyond those peak experiences. We have to integrate that into our knowing and our beingness in order to like live through that vibration and not just have it be the next high or the next heightened experience of, oh yes. But then when we're not living in, oh yes, then the rest of the world feels like darkness and hell. You know what I mean? And it feels like a bipolarity, a huge duality. And I don't feel like that's real. We don't have to live in that duality. We can live closer to the middle, closer to our heart.
That's beautiful. Beautiful. Now, you've got a lot of tools in your toolbox. Like I was stating earlier, right? You've done a lot of things and a lot of different certificates, a lot of studying and practicing. Now, at this point in your life, through your journey where you've arrived at now, is there like a certain tool that you use over and over again when you're helping somebody? Like for example, do you have like your own personal hack that you like to use over and over again? Is there a certain tool in your basket that you reach for more often than others?
It's so interesting you say that, because, I'm not aware of the processes necessarily until somebody asks me. But I think the one tool that I use over and over again, that's kind of become a hack. It's something that a spiritual teacher had mentioned to us at one time about how to align our subtle bodies and connect to source. And I've kind of hacked that experience a little bit more and creating it as a boundary exercise of being able to teach people how to tune into really what energy is, right? And what that energy feels like when it comes into our field, and how we can say no to it and shift it back out of our field. And it's through that alignment exercise of connecting to earth and source and connecting to our heart, expanding that field out in front of us, right? So that 12 inches or whatever arm's length all the way around us is our own aura. It's our own bubble. It's our own field. Okay. And we get to say yes or no to whatever comes into that field. We're just so unconsciously saying yes or no to everything that we can't discern what's coming in and out of. And so one of the things that I guess I do use with everybody is that level of discernment of what's coming into their field and what they're saying yes to, and what choices that they have around that, and just making it a dance of energy instead of a big long story.
Wow, that's beautiful. Was there a time when have you always been this open and spiritual, or was there a time when you were more like the science, the math, the more, a certain way of doing things? Because you seem so integrated, right? You've got the science, but you also have the spirituality. And, something that keeps coming back to me is something I shared with Amanda recently is, I saw this quote, quantum physics is where they hide spirituality, right? Mm-hmm. And, I see science is here, but I see this whole thing above it, which is what's called, quantum physics, but it just is, right? What's been your journey as far as, like, have you just always been this open person and saw both sides and you operated from both sides of the brain, or was there a journey and an aha for you to where you're like, wow, there's more than, what's in the textbook?
Well, I think I've always had both sides of the brain, really. And I'm not sure why, now that you asked that question, I'm not sure why, but I think I've always had both sides of the brain, right? So, along my journey early on, when I first started working in acute mental health care at a private psychiatric hospital, that whole foundation at that time, that was a really awesome program. That was before managed care came in, and they had dance therapy and psychodrama and art therapy. And then of course there was the other side that was very science and was med management and all those things. And so I got to really witness the opportunity of what art therapy did for people, what psychodrama was able to do for people. And I think I've always been able to see energy, in some way, though not really understand it, right? Because it wasn't something I could talk about with other people because I was labeled other things. And so I think I've always had kind of both aspects where I've gone on and I've done the science learning of things to appreciate, that framework. Okay. But I also have noticed how very limiting that framework can be. In fact, I really noticed how limiting any framework can be, right? Because we can get stuck in it. And so being able to kind of move in and out of each framework to pick and pull the things that feel the most true for me, I guess, is how I've been able to integrate. I so appreciate you saying that I've been able to integrate it, because it's nice to have that mirrored back, Michael. So thank you. But so any particular spot, going back to your question, I feel like I was doing the science level aspect of things. And then I had this amazing opportunity at one point to do my hypnotherapy and breathwork certification, which was 4 years of really integrated, deep practice of working with the same group of 30 people through the Wellness Institute. At that time, they were out of Issaquah, Washington. And I really wasn't, credentialed to be there. I was a nurse at the time. They wanted therapists. I wasn't a therapist. And yet I had done enough in this psychiatric experience and leading groups that they said, well, come on in and do this. And I felt like that was a huge turning point in my own journey, in my own wellness, in my own look at relationships, generational trauma. It's also the place where I learned about what a more healthy connection was and healthy communication was. We also did vision quests. We walked on hot coals. We did sweat lodges. We did chanting and meditation. We learned about, at that heart math was really just beginning, but there was stuff around heart math that was integrated into that. And so it was in that moment that I started to see how much our beliefs affect our wellness, and I didn't understand it from quite a heart math perspective of the way that I do now, but I knew that breaking up the energy in the body and removing the patterns and getting people into their body, not just in their head with regular psychiatric kind of mental health conversation, was imperative. And then going back into the hospital setting, trying to teach people that who really didn't want anything to know about that because they had switched to a managed care thing. You are in the hospital for 7 to 10 days. And if you didn't do any med changes within a couple of days, then the insurance said you didn't belong here anymore. So it was kind of like this constant, abrasive kind of thing with working with any sort of system, right? In any sort of authority system. So having to kind of break out of that and trust my own knowing enough to step out of all those systems to really create something that I felt like was more meaningful to other people, because otherwise I felt like I was living a lie. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, hey, one more question and then I'll pass the mic because I've been a ball hog here, but and this is a question, it's first thing, boom, like it's the first thing that comes up to your mind, right?
Okay.
If there was a common thread or theme amongst all of the clients you've seen over the years, what would that common theme be?
The common theme would be trauma. Any
particular type of trauma?
Most of my clients are sexual trauma, but I have... anything can be labeled a trauma, but sexual trauma has been a big one. But anything, health traumas are also another one that I see a lot that come into my practice. And I would say the commonality is people have tried so many other things in order to get better, and they haven't been able to have lasting results. And so that's when they end up coming in to see me, and through utilizing a bunch of different modalities, including breathwork and hypnotherapy, including nutrition, including lifestyle changes, including doing the belief work. Homeopathy is also another amazing modality, and people start to get better. And it's really beautiful to be on the other side, watching somebody blossom and have their life change, and the opportunities that they see now for their own well-being just emerge. It's the most beautiful thing, Michael.
Do you see a common trigger or a wake-up call for people? Like, is there a common like a thing that happens that all of a sudden they see the light and they have a shift in perspective?
Well, most of the people that are coming to me, Amanda's words of people change out of desperation or inspiration. And most of the time when people come to me, they're not inspired. They're actually quite desperate. It's like they're hanging on to some level of hope one more time to come in and try one more thing. And so I think that's the thing that I see the most, is like the level of desperation, of really like, okay, I've tried all those other things. There's a moment in here that I have to surrender to something. I just don't know what that something is. And I don't know what the container of safety is to hold me in while I surrender. And I think that's that's such a huge aspect for any of us who need to surrender one part of themselves. And sometimes it's a huge story, like a huge part of ourselves that we need to surrender in order to, vibe up or heal, or whatever language we want to use. Live a life worth living is the one I usually use, and we have to have a container where it feels safe enough in our vulnerability in order to surrender,
Mm-hmm. Well, you bring up an interesting point, because it reminds me of a time years ago that I did this seminar, and it was personal growth. And they had us write our story. Like, we all have our stories, right? Child of divorce, unloved, unrecognized, right? All those, worthy issues, like, write the story. And it was interesting writing that story and then reading it out loud to my partner at the time, in your group. It really takes the heat off of it. And almost, there was a lot of laughter, tears, chuckles, like, this is ridiculous. It takes the heat off of the story by writing it down and then sharing it with somebody. Have you found that exercise of value?
Yeah, so we do a lot of storytelling in here, for sure. And I think what's also really interesting, right, is when we start sharing our stories, even though the story might have different characters, right? But really the stories are generally all the same, no matter what the experiences are. Like, there's still the common thread for all of us is, am I worthy? Am I good enough? Am I lovable? What is my purpose? I want to know who I am. Like, that's a human story, right? I mean, that's just the story of, humaning. And I think when we can really understand that and just see that core commonality, it starts to build a bridge of heart connection, right? Like, we think our shame is who we are when we're carrying that around, but that's not who you are. That's a secondary. Shame is a secondary emotion. There's only two primary emotions: love or fear. And if you're not in a place of love, then you're moving into fear some way. And that story it's just a different story for everybody. But the commonality is, I'm terrified that I'm not enough and I'm not doing it good enough, right? Like, I'm not good enough. And we see that with people. Yeah. It doesn't matter, again, socioeconomic, race, it doesn't matter. It's like, am I enough? Am I doing enough for my family? Am I doing enough for my life? Am I doing enough for my community? Am I doing enough for my world? It's so simple.
Beautiful. Yeah. Well, I'm passing the mic. So, Kingsley.
Yeah, no, I love that where that was going. I want to dive a little bit deeper into the, because I've heard this from Amanda and Michael, this idea of limiting beliefs. I'm curious how you start with a patient, Laurie, with those limiting beliefs, and so walk us through that. Like, how does that begin? Do you sort of do a kind of like an interview and kind of glean what the limiting beliefs are, and then once you find out what those are, how do you break them down?
Sure. So usually the process looks, in the beginning, very much like coming to a doctor, right? Where somebody's going to spend the first couple of sessions like telling me their story, and I'm looking at the whole story of what do they know about what is the word I'm looking for? What do they know about their journey from conception? Okay. From conception to where they are now. And so there's that, the story of who they are. There's the symptoms. There's the dietary stuff. There's all that. So I'm looking at this gigantic picture of this human in front of me. And as you're doing that interview process, people naturally start sharing, I know I should be doing this, but I don't do this. And I'll say, well, why? I'm too busy. I'm too whatever. And you start to see patterns. And so that's what I'm looking for as I do that interview process. I'm gathering a bunch of data, and through that time frame, I'm starting to recognize some patterns. And usually those patterns, even though again they have different storylines, like this is my pattern at work. Well, guess what? It's the same pattern I have at home with my mother. It's the same pattern I have with my partner. It's the same pattern I have with my kids. And it might be the same pattern I have in my community. So you start seeing some patterns that show up. And so then we'll start a conversation about that. And oftentimes, like I said, the conversation to me isn't enough. So from that point, we'll move into either hypnotherapy, which is generally where I start with people, because through the hypnotherapy process, they start to understand what I call the map of going into their body, of relaxing, going into their body, having some material come up from that's in the subconscious that you can get to, those core beliefs that you can get to when somebody's in a deeply relaxed state. And then they start to really experientially understand. Okay, so they experientially understand where that pattern is stored in their body, what that emotional pattern feels like as it's stuck in the body. Okay, and then how we release that and reframe that pattern. And so all that happens in the course of one session. And then when somebody understands the map of that and starts to trust the process of that and starts to trust the fact that I'm here to support them, I'm not going anywhere, not even in my head. Am I drifting off to think about what's happening, for dinner tonight? They start to feel that safety of that container. And then I move into breath work, where I'm doing much less talking and they can really go into their body. Because to me, I think the body is the thing that holds the most wisdom. Our brain can tell us all kinds of other things. It's so easy for our brain to get stuck on different topics or be distracted or, watch a program and we're not even sure what we're saying yes to as we watch the program, but somehow we're saying yes to it. And now we think that's our reality. When our body really knows what the reality is, because it's interacting with the current environment all the time. And so, so that's what it would be like. It would be to get them back into their body, to experience the emotion, to reframe the belief, and then create a plan of how are you going to integrate that into your life. Now that this is what, where this story comes from, and you've reframed it, how are you going to take that into your life? How are you going to take this new awareness in and speak your truth in your relationships? How are you going to make different choices for the food that you're eating? How are you going to say yes or no to the levels of intimacy that you want?
Yeah, that's really interesting, actually, because it's not really, what it's not really mainstream, I would say, because, we always think of the brain, it's all, mental health, if you will, it's all about the brain, but you're saying is actually a huge body component of it. So that to me is really interesting.
Yes, and mental health. I wish we could really eliminate that word, Kingsley, as far as mental health, because what we know now, that's common knowledge. Okay, so when I started all this over 30 years ago, it was all woo-woo stuff, right? It was all woo-woo. Nobody really understood what was happening, although we knew it worked, right? But now we have so much science to back it up. And I have so much respect and love for the Heart Math Institute, because I think there've been such a huge, a huge resource for this level of understanding that really didn't have a whole lot of other motivation around it in the beginning, except to build resiliency and to try to understand what that was. It wasn't we're going to do this for pharmaceutical. It wasn't we're, what I mean? It was kind of clean. And so now we really understand so much more that your mental health is it's not mental health. It's your freaking health. It's affecting, at least 1,400 chemical responses. It's shifting your whole biology. So to me, mental health should be totally evacuated from the vocabulary of providers, and really should be, your health. Your health is your wealth. Your health is your vitality.
Yes. Love that. That's a great message. You've opened my eyes for sure. And I understand why you and Amanda are friends. You talked about the 1400 chemicals that shift. Let's talk a little bit more about the tools you use, because when you were introduced to Aya, I'm curious how does that fit into your tool bag when you're treating a patient? Because it sounds like you're very sort of like intuitive about, which direction to go with a patient. But talk to us about that.
Yeah, so I really see Aya as a really beautiful intercurrent to what it is I'm doing on the weekly, monthly, however many times people are coming to see me, the in between visits. And I also let them know that I'm using Aya. I mean, one of the things I think is so valuable is that there's no hierarchy in my office. Like, we're just two humans trying to figure things out. And, so I might use Aya to help me get a good night's sleep because I've had, maybe a little bit more stressful day, and I've done some other tools for myself, but I'm going to just add another layer and help use Aya for the sonic supplements for sleep support. And so I'll teach them how to use the sonic supplements for a variety of things, whatever they're struggling with. It might be anxiety, it might be focus, it might be, immune support, it might be sleep support. So I love the sonic supplements and being able to do that. And there's no language in there, so you can't get caught up in a story. You can be, I encourage people to actually utilize headphones while they're listening to it. So, and be in a place where they can be quiet, experiencing what's happening in their body, so that if the sonic supplement is causing a little bit of chaos in their body, they know at this point how to move through that chaos and find a deeper state of where the music is really impacting them more fully. Really using it to help them connect that mind-body approach. So I use that quite a bit. And what I also love is, is using the Aya prompts for journal prompts. So if they're struggling with something on the day to day, or something that we've talked about, and they want to explore that a little bit deeper, they can use Aya to help them see different perspectives around what's happening with the relationship with their mom, or what they need to say, but they're afraid to say, and what would be the best way to say it in order to not, get pulled into the victim triangle, which is another thing I really do a lot of teaching on. So I use the journal stuff quite frequently as well.
Yeah, I'm interested about the victim triangle. Tell us more about that. What is that about?
Oh, sure. So the victim triangle is basically the ways that we get stuck in fear. So, we have a triangle, and at one point of the triangle is the victim. At another point of the triangle is the rescuer. And on the other end of the triangle is the persecutor. And we go round and round the triangle. So, for example, and the triangle's held up by fear. Okay. So for example, you might have something that's happening where, you're feeling like you're unloved, you're unworthy, and somebody comes in to rescue you, and all of a sudden you feel amazing. But if that person keeps rescuing you over and over again, it starts to feel kind of like restrictive, right? Because you don't have any room to breathe because somebody's always trying to do for you or whatever. And then you get resentful, and then you start saying really horrible things to somebody and pushing people away. And then, you move back into the victim spot because, oh my God, what a horrible person I am. Look what I did, whatever. And we kind of go round and round that triangle in our relationships. Like, we just swap out who's going to be rescuing, who's going to be the one pissed off, and we kind of do this back and forth. And I see this concept, this pattern, as so embedded in the planetary culture. Okay. And in the shamans, we would say that's sort of like this mythic realm that is a layer of that surrounds us so subconsciously, I mean, you watch any Lifetime movie, you're going to see the victim triangle. You watch the news, you're going to see the victim triangle. You're going to see it everywhere. It's so embedded in us, you know. In politics, I mean, I could go on and on, but I don't want to raise any hairs with anybody. You know what I mean? But like, you can see it everywhere. And that triangle, because it's created in fear, just keeps us feeling separate. And when we feel separate, what do we feel? More fear. So we keep, recapitulating that same trauma cycle, if you will. And that's like, I think the deepest trauma cycle that's culturally and globally embedded. And maybe we could go as far as to say that's the duality of what we live in, of good and bad, black and white, fear and love, whatever, whatever the duality exists. But I think that duality is always going to exist, but we can fine tune ourselves. We are the tuning fork. We can fine tune ourselves to living, again, more in that place of love and less in that triangle of fear. And as we do that, we recognize how much control we have, where we're giving our power away, what is our power. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, it does. So you mentioned tuning, and how do you see music playing a role in that tuning? Because I've definitely experienced it myself, where I'll be feeling just tired, and I'll tell myself, okay, shift. You need to shift, because like you need to just be awake. You need to so and I'll put on a sonic supplement. I'll select Energize and Wheel of Fortune, and then I'll go for a walk. But explain what's happening there with the music and with my setting that intention. Like, explain, like, how does that work as a tool?
So it works as a tool because you're setting the intention. So whenever you're setting an intention, right, I'm intending for this to happen. We're giving our brain sort of the bone. This is what I focus on, and what you focus on increases. This is a law of the brain. Okay. So if you focus on fear is going to increase. That's all you're going to see is more fear. You focus on love, that's what's going to increase. Okay. And your brain, it's an amazing, magical thing, okay? But it's really not that magical. It's like what you focus on increases. It's very simple. So you set the intention that you're going to do this. I'm going to increase my focus. I'm going to increase my attention. I'm going to use the sonic supplement. And so there's already, because you're focusing there's a way that you're actually like subconsciously saying, yes, you're open to receive. This is my intention. Okay, now I'm open to receive what's coming back. Isn't that fascinating? Like, think about this, all right? And not just in the music, but in everything. Okay, so we're already setting the vibration, the wave out, that physics wave out into the universe. All right, so there's one layer. So then the sonic supplement comes in, and music has been, sound therapy. Sound has been used for centuries, millennia, to help shift vibration and shift energy, move energy. We know that the native people, when they would get done warring, like if they were doing like a war thing, they would come back and they would be around the fire. The men would be separated from the women, and they would be doing this war dance and telling the story, and the drums would be going, and the movement and the dance would be happening, so that they could discharge all of that energy and that trauma before they were welcomed back into the village where the women and the children were. So they weren't bringing all of that energy back into the village, which I think is a huge understanding that we could like really wrap our heads around in our society, right? But music, we also know that each note has the ability to shift water molecules. We know this. Like, this isn't woo-woo anymore. We know this. And so music has a way of shifting the brain waves of what's happening in our body. So that's where I see the sonic supplements kind of coming in, because all of this stuff we're saying yes to, our body is open to that awareness of it based on our intention. And then the music is just coming in and doing what music does, what we automatically say yes to, because the vibration is starting to resonate in the cells of our body, and our cells are recognizing that as a yes. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Hey, can I add to that?
Yes, please.
That's wonderful, because you sparked insight and memory in me, because it's interesting. It's been used from forever, right? Since we could hit a stick against a tree,
Right.
we were using sound intentionally for either insight, transformation, or wellness, right? So for probably much longer period of time than modern history, modern days, we've been using sound and music intentionally,
Right.
to elicit some sort of response, whether it's insight or wellness, right? But then modern time comes, and the radio comes, right? The phonograph and the vinyl records, and now music turns from this intentional, deep thing that drives all the other frequency that surrounds us. We live in a frequency soup.
Right.
We are all vibration. Even this table that I'm leaning on, everything's vibration, right? So we were, up until modern times, we were using music very intentionally, right? And then the phonograph came, vinyl records, and now MP3s and streaming. Now music has become predominantly entertainment, right? Now there's still a segment, it's niche, the sound therapists of the world that use it intentionally, right? But the vast world, thinks of music as entertainment, right? It's the fun thing to do, which it is, right? It's both.
Right.
And the nice thing about iah.fit, and what's really unique about it, is that it's bringing back that intentionality inside entertainment, right? Because we do everything from nature sounds to rock and roll to EDM to mellow in between, steady work music, right? So there's a broad catalog of different genres that tap into that, music as entertainment mindset that most people have, but the intention, the driver of it, is bringing back the ancient wisdom from the past that no, music is a tool for well-being, insight, and vitality, right? However, now it's framed and it's packaged in a way to where it's more readily available to the average person that thinks of music as entertainment. Oh, so I can have entertainment and wellness at the same time, right? So it's kind of like merging those two worlds together. And do you mind if I share my screen, Kingsley?
Awesome.
Go for it.
Okay, so I'm going to... Okay, so, one reason for my, 50 questions, Laurie, was because I was gathering insight to create the perfect sonic supplement, not only for us on this call, because we're all one, and if we're talking about self-worth and being enough and I am lovable, then that's part of our collective consciousness as well. So I know that for myself to be true, because, self-worth has been something that I've been it's a theme, right? It's a recurring theme in my life. And I feel like, each day, each week, each year, I rise above that, and I stand in, I am worthy, I am, enough, I am lovable. So this is a sonic supplement that has been crafted just now based in this conversation, based off of this universal timing, off of your, driving beautiful energy and life force. This has been spawned. And so this is for you to use in any manner you want. This is for you and your community if you want to share it with them. And it's titled, I Am Worthy. Unlock the profound confidence within you as you embrace the mantra, I am worthy, I'm enough, I am lovable. Let the harmonizing frequencies of the sonic supplement envelop you, dissolving self-doubt and awakening your inner strength. Step boldly into your true essence, radiating love and self-assurance. Now, I copied the link here and I put it in the chat, so you can copy and paste that, and then you can add it to your iah account if you want. But I wanted to take a moment and we can listen to the first, minute or so of the first track, and then I'll stop the music, and then we'll kind of go quickly through each of these and kind of get the insights as they come from this 10-track sonic supplement. How does that sound?
Great.
Okay, so let's take a listen.
When life tests you, be like a willow, strong enough to stand your ground, but flexible enough to bend without breaking.
So I'm going to go ahead and stop that. And let's take a look at what we have here. So for I Am Worthy, each of these come in a specific order. Aya curates it based off of this prompt, and then she goes into the RFM catalog and brings back to you the resonance frequency music that aligns with that need or ask or that prompt, right? So in the situation, we have flexible strength at 432 hertz, and you can always click on this tooltip and it'll give you kind of the message of that track and the frequency meaning. And so the situation here for I Am Worthy is, flexible strength. And then we move into the challenge, and it's trust in autonomy. And if we click on that, and I just stopped it because I want to just read this here. The message is empower the people around you by acknowledging their autonomy. Trust that others have their own wisdom and their own paths to follow. Then we move into the focus, sacral wave surge, and we move into the recent past, inner wisdom, move into the possibilities of fulfillment through selflessness, the near future, vibrant bass flow. Look at that vitality and energy that we're moving into. The power strength is your foundational surge. And just to take a look at that one really quick. I feel the surge of energy from my foundation propelling me forward. My roots give me the strength to rise and conquer. This is in the frequency of 396 hertz. You're unlocking the gateway to liberate yourself from fear and guilt. Heralded as the frequency of liberation, 396 hertz music sets the stage for profound personal transformation. And then we move into the environment. That's what surrounds us. And we have vibrant silhouettes at 528 hertz, which is also known as the love frequency, the frequency of transformation. And I celebrate the vibrant contours of my spirit, each one casting a brilliant light. By tuning into 528 frequency, you tap into the very essence of love and transformation, often hailed as a miracle tone with the frequency of love. Our 528 hertz music beckons deep emotional healing and a surge of spiritual enlightenment. And then we move into Sawilo, your hopes, and this is wholeness. And that's what we're really searching for here, is in I am worthy, I am enough, and I am lovable, is just stepping into your overall wholeness, and that's at 528 hertz as well. And the outcome is Fihu, prosperity, at 528 hertz. And let's go ahead and just listen to the first 30 seconds of this and kind of get grounded on the outcome. But I'm going to enjoy kind of listening to this entire track maybe in the background as I work later, and just kind of infuse this I am worthy deeper into my vibrational essence. Let's have a listen.
Abundance flows freely towards me, unlocking wealth and success.
Hey, Michael.
Yep.
I was made aware that you might be tight on time.
Oh, okay. So all right, let's resolve then.
And I've said this right at my 11:11. So this must be the path. And I hate to cut this short because I always feel like we get this momentum and it's like right around this time, and then it's like really going. So we definitely have to do a part 2 with you, Laurie.
Oh, thanks.
And yes, I know Amanda wanted to say some more things as well. So we will do a part 2. And thank you for sharing this I Am Worthy supplement. So any final words, Amanda?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Laurie Teal, psychiatric nurse practitioner, that whole idea of mental health is really the brain's interpretation of our overall health and vitality. And that's one of the things that is so unique and different about Laurie as a mental health practitioner. There's the work that I do as a physical therapist in trauma. There's very few mental health practitioners that see the physical body and see the level of transformation that's possible the same way that Laurie does. And yes, I know a lot about health on a very deep level, and I use a model of biochemistry, biomechanics, and bioelectrical, and like what's out of balance, So, but if Amanda Carpenter was sick and ill and couldn't make her own decisions, Laurie would be the one that would step in and make my decisions, because she knows the body at the same level that I do. She knows my unique values. She sees the world the same way. And she is a powerful female who would definitely be there, by my bedside, challenging the status quo to make sure that I got the care that I fight for others for. So, I appreciate you dearly. Laurie, you're the same human being, whether we're working together with a trauma client and like holding our most professional vibe, or we're playing on the beach together. And I so appreciate that about you, the way that you see mental health and the way that you see the world. There's so much wisdom within you. Yet when you speak, it sounds like it's such a simplistic way. Right. And I want the world to know that she can speak this way because of all the science behind everything that she has learned in this lifetime and previous ones as well. And there is such deep wisdom in all of her words. And at the end of the day, she knows that it's easy, or she knows that it's simple rather, but it is not easy. And the level of transformation and the journey that you take your patients on, you make it as easy and as loving as you possibly can be. And I just so appreciate that you have stepped outside of the status quo of the mental health world, and you see your patients to that complete healing. You take them to that complete transformation of bringing them home to their own hearts of self-love. And I so appreciate that for you and with you, and love that you're on this journey of iah with me as our mental health representative on our medical board. So thank you, and I love you.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for joining us. Michael, I know you have to go, but Laurie, any final words?
No, just thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to sit and share with each of you. And I look forward to more conversation and more sharing, and definitely way more circles of holding hands around the fire.
Thank you, Laurie. It was wonderful.
Okay.
Until next time, much love.
Bye-bye.
Take care. I love you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Harmonize Your Life. We hope you found inspiration and practical insights to enhance your well-being. Until next time, stay well and keep shining.